Okay, very good. Sorry about that. I'd like to call to order the June 15th, 2023 meeting of the Arizona State Parks Board together. Because I am participating in this meeting telephonically, I am going to delegate the management of the meeting to Vice Chairman John Smith. John, will you please take it over?
With that, through the chair, I will exercise the gavel, call the meeting to order. And with that, may we have a roll call?
Dale Larson,
Here.
John Sefton,
Present.
Jeff Buchanan,
Here.
Sarah King,
Here.
Terry Palmberg. Here. Acting chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. So please join us. Member Palmberg will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America,
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
with liberty and justice for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. And as standard, we do like to begin our meetings with the mission statement as read. As board members, we are gathered today to be stewards and voice of the Arizona State Parks and its mission statement to manage and conserve Arizona's natural, cultural, and recreational resources for the benefit of the people, both in our parks and through our partners. We do have on the phone with us a couple of special guests with agenda items. Tammy Pike from BLM, our outdoor recreation planner, as well as Christy Diaz-Trayan, Parks and Rec Director with Oro Valley. All right, so let's jump right into the agenda. And we will have 2 items that we will pull from the consent agenda. They are the amendment request, increase request for the, let's see how this is written. I'm sorry, agenda item? Oh, number 1, okay. So for the agenda item number 1, consideration and action of approval of the minutes for the May 18th, 2023 board meeting.
So moved.
We have a
Second.
motion and a second. Motion by Member Buchanan, second by Member Palmberg. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? The minutes pass. And then item number D2, consideration of consent agenda items. We have items A through G, and we are intending to pull from consent action item 2C and item 2F for further discussion. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda less those 2 items?
So moved.
Is this, I'll move.
So we have a,
Mr. Vice Chair, I've got a question.
yes, sir.
The 2 items, can you, those 2 items, to Charlie and Foxtrot, can you say what those are again?
Yes. To Charlie is the consideration and action to approve funding for the cost amendment increase and additional scope items to the Bureau of Land Management Travel Management Planning Project 552204 as presented by staff. As well, item 2F is the consideration and action to approve funding for the submitted 2023 Land Water Conservation Fund, specifically for the Oro Valley Naranja Park Skate Park and Pump Track, $1 million.
Okay, so, I also, there is one item, and I'm looking at the presentation, which doesn't include, at least I haven't found it all the details, but I also had talked to the chair about pulling the item from the funding for the Game and Fish Department out of consent agenda. And The issue is, since I'm a commissioner for the Game and Fish Department, I'd really need to recuse myself from voting on giving them funding.
Mr.
Right, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, this is Dale. Yes, Jeff did make that contact, and because he would like to recuse himself from that particular item with the Arizona Game and Fish, we thought it prudent then to probably pull that item out of consideration so that he doesn't have to vote for that.
Excellent. So we'll take that under separate action, and that is item number, am I finding?
B,
Item C.
I'm sorry.
D. 2D.
Got it. So we have item 2C, 2D, and 2F taken off of consent agenda with a motion to
So moved.
approve the remainder on the consent agenda.
I will second that motion.
Motion and second. Again, all in favor for, well, since we're doing funding with this, we'll do a roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Septon,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair, the motion is passed.
Thank you. So we can consider the item 2C, consideration and action approval funding for the cost amendment increase and additional scope items for the Bureau of Land Management Travel Management Planning Project presented by staff. Mr. Matt?
Good morning, Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board. With this, do you have the slides for this? Oh, I have the power, I forgot. We have the power. Maybe somewhere. I don't, oh,
I'll advance
is
it.
it, how delayed is it?
You should be fine. I'll
I
take
hit
it.
it like 3 times, so it's good. Anyways, so with this amendment request in fiscal year 2022, the Bureau of Land Management was awarded $412,969 to complete 8 travel management plans with project 552204. The project start date was January 26, 2022, and the proposed project end date at this time is June 30th, 2024, based on a project agreement with State Parks. Due to staffing shortages, time constraints, and budget processes, they are requesting a scope change and increased funding request. The scope change request is asking for the reallocation of funding from the Safford Southwest and Yuma East travel management plans to a newly created Yuma Gila River travel management plan. This change will not affect the current project funding. However, with the development of the new Yuma Gila River travel management plan, there is an increased grant request to complete inventories of this travel management plan area in the total of 111. See there, it's kept. Was that you or me?
That was me.
Okay. Of $111,150. So the 2 items in red. I have a laser too. Wow, this is... So these 2 here, the Yuma Safford or Yuma Southwest and Safford Southwest and Yuma East evaluations will be combined to make the one scope item for $82,920. Then you have your new inventories for the Yuma Gila River, which is a new request, the $111,115. So these costs here, these 2 are a wash with the $82,900. Then you also have the trail maps and information, Safford Southwest and Yuma East combining to make the Yuma Gila River mapping at that same cost of $3,705. But again, no change in cost related to that change. And then the same thing here in the actual completion of environmental clearances for the Safford Southwest and the Yuma East, combining for the $112,000 for the Yuma Gila River travel management evaluations. So most of these are a wash, and then there is the one new request for the 111,150. And seeing it visually was kind of the best way to describe it because it is kind of a weird request. With the amendment, the Bureau of Land Management would be completing 7 travel management plans instead of 8, but would cover roughly the same footprint of the original project boundaries proposed. The project is currently at 38% complete, and with the increase funding request, it would obviously drop their percentage complete done a little bit, but wouldn't affect the overall timeline of the completion or estimated completion of June 30th of next year. Staff does not have any issues with this amendment request, but because it is a large-scale scope change and new amendment or new funding request to the project, it does require board approval. OFAG and AORC recommended to approve the amendment, and I believe Tammy Pike is on the line to answer any questions specifically to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Eberhard. Tammy, would you like to kind of give an overview and your perspective on the request and the change? And I think specifically just a little bit more clarity on the travel management plans and the challenges that you're having, obviously with staffing. Are you using consultants along this line? Give you enough of a prompt?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. What's going on is with the advent of COVID and what happened to society from that, it is taking BLM an extensive amount of time to fill positions as people move on, move up, move around, whatever. And we've got a lot of empty positions that we still have not been able to fill. So what we're trying to do is, instead of completing 8 individual travel management plans, we're going to complete 7, one being the combined of the combination, if I could talk today, of the Yuma Gila River plan. So we'll be completing 8 areas as we originally had planned, but we're using one team to complete that Yuma Gila River plan instead of having to use 2 teams to complete 2 different plans. This way we're more effective and more efficient with the personnel that we do have.
Mr. Vice Chair, so why the increased cost?
Because the mileage was not placed on the original grant and the mileage has increased with this.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, Member Palmer, so looking at, this is the scope breakdown for the grant in the actual initial request. And you'll notice that there was no inventory included for these 2. There's inventory for the others, but it wasn't included in the initial request for these 2. So this would have been included had we done the Safford and Yuma route inventory, but it wasn't included in the initial request, just oversight. So this is saying, okay, we want to do the evaluations and the inventory. So the inventory wasn't initially included, and that's where that cost is coming from.
Very good, thank you.
And real quick, Tammy, as a matter of authority and responsibility, the TMPs, are they mandated by legislation? Or what's the?
We are required under both our RMPs, which is the resource management plans, and by request, I think is the best way to put it, from both Congress and from our headquarters office to get these completed.
Very good. And with those requests, are there funds available through the federal sources?
There are not additional funds, no. They have to come out of our regular funding.
So you're doing your best to spread the peanut butter?
Exactly. No jam on this sandwich.
No jam on this one, huh? Okay, any other questions from the commission, from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Vice Chair, this is Dale. I also wanted to have this pulled for a couple of reasons, and I appreciate Tammy's response to it and your comment, Mr. Vice Chair, regarding the fact that if we don't fund this, it's not going to be funded, and that's certainly a priority. I support it, but my concerns are sort of threefold. One, and Director Burchard or Matt could probably clarify this, the OHV funding, there's a big balance in that money, and we need to spend it. And BLM obviously is one of those groups that can take advantage of this. And so the purpose of putting this as a discussion item is to make sure for the public record that we as a board not only want to see the OHV funds expended properly, but that BLM is doing everything possible within the resources that they have, notwithstanding the challenges and the impediments that as a federal agency they've gone through and they continue to go through, but to get this project done. And so I think it's just helpful for us to fully understand that as a state government entity funding a federal government entity, that the BLM, who is a wonderful friend of ours and work with us in all areas, need to do everything possible to get this project completed on time.
Very well said. Mr. Everhart?
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the board, coming into today's meeting, there's roughly $1.7 million available in the Off-Highway Vehicle Recreation Fund, which again is the resident decal, non-resident decal, and 0.5% of all gas tax for the state. So based on awards throughout fiscal year 2023, we're going into 24. With today's awards and recommendations, there would be roughly 1.2 available going into fiscal year 2024 after these awards.
Matt, if I might put you on the spot, with these plans completed, how do you implement, or how does it bring value to our OHV community and more importantly the environmental community?
Yeah, so currently the vast majority of off-highway vehicle opportunities take place on federal properties. So BLM, Forest Service are the primary players in that arena. And obviously if these plans and routes aren't designated, then there's less places to ride. So currently the state has about 40,000 miles of off-highway vehicle recreation opportunities. These inventories would be included in that, and it allows us to then educate users on where they can go. So that helps us in information sharing, education. We've worked with our marketing team to develop a very extensive network of options on our website of where folks can go, and this would just contribute more resources to them.
Excellent. Ms. Pike, anything further from your point? Tammy, anything else to add? I think we might have lost you.
No, I just want to thank whoever spoke on BLM's behalf, because we are trying to do everything possible to complete this grant. We are putting teams together from the state office and everything else to try and finish these grant projects.
Excellent, thank you. And that was Chair Larson that spoke, really adding that valuable clarity on the relationship. So any other discussion from the board? With that, I'll entertain a motion for item 2C.
Vice Chair, Terry Palmberg, I move that the State Parks Board approve an amendment project 552204 Bureau of Land Management Travel Management Plan for presented scope changes and increase the award amount from $412,969 to $524,119.
Second.
Member Buchanan seconds. With that, we'll do a roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Septon,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
The motion passed, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Excellent. So then the second item is 2D, which we will, Member Buchanan will be abstaining from. This is consideration of action to approve the funding for the submitted 2023 State Lake Improvement Grant Fund applications. Do we need a staff presentation from this? I'm not sensing that we do.
No.
So this one would be, do we have a motion for that? Oh, boy. So 2D.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Yep.
I, Terry Palmberg, move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve the funding for the 2023 State Lake Improvement Fund grant application as follows. Arizona Game and Fish Department contact point dock replacement project in the amount of $800,000 and the paddock. That's it, thank you.
All right,
800,000. John Sefton will second.
thank you. Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Member Buchanan,
Abstain.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, the Game and Fish.
Game and Fish is approved. Very good. All right, and the next one is item 2F, consideration of action to approve funding for the submitted 2023 Land and Water Conservation Fund grant applications. We'll have a short presentation from Mickey on this one. And then Christy Diaz-Trayan is also here from Oro Valley on the line.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, just a reminder, the Land and Water Conservation Fund provides matching grants for acquisition and development of public outdoor recreation facilities. All LPCS funding requires a minimum 1-to-1 match. For the project that was submitted in this cycle, Oro Valley, Naranja Park, it's a 213-acre park located at a site of an old gravel pit. There are several existing facilities at the park, including current lighted fields, a dog park, interactive playground, archery range, remote control airfield, and trails. The plans, separate from the grant, are also to build additional fields with lights, a splash pad, pickleball court, parking, restrooms, ramadas, additional picnic facilities, and more trails. The grant, some of the priorities from the master plan, which had a lot of public input, was for a skate park and a pump track. The closest skate park is over 8 miles away, and the grant funding will be requested to build the skate park. It'll also fund a pump track that will be used for bikes. Finally, they will match it with fencing, landscaping, parking, and a restroom. So they have the $1 million match in place, it's shovel ready, and AORC and staff recommend a fully funded project. And Christie's on the line to provide more information.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Christy, would you like to give an overview of the value to the community and the benefit for the LWCF funding towards it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mickey, for the presentation and opening, and board for the opportunity for us to talk about this great project. With me is Deputy Director Matt Jankowski, who wrote and submitted the grant. Hopefully you have a copy of the, oh yeah, I see it up on the screen. So this is a Google map of what the Naranja Park looks like. As mentioned, it's the 213 acres on the right side of your screen. That roadway, that main roadway, is Tangerine. And then on the left side of your screen is Naranja. And the roadway that goes through that is Musette. As you see, it was an old gravel pit. We spent a significant amount of money moving dirt, filling in site slopes, and making site improvements. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please.
We see
I
it.
know there's a delay.
Yeah, we see
Can
it.
you?
Yeah, we see it.
Okay, great. So the next slide shows the conceptual site plan that we are working on. As mentioned earlier, the COVID effect has impacted this project, so we had to make some reductions from the original plan. But overall, this is a $21 million improvement project. So you can see we are opening a north ingress-egress access off of Tangerine, and that roadway will take you all the way down south to Naranja. That'll be brand new and also include a multi-use path with quite a bit of landscape. As you move south, you see that white square. That's where the skate park pump track will be. The next slide will show you a little more detail in that. But that is a brand new amenity for our entire community. We do not have a skate park in our community, nor do we have a pump track. And we have a very active, robust cycling community and youth. And so this is a coveted amenity that people are looking forward to. As you travel a little further south down that Newset roadway, you can see we have a remote control airfield for our RC Flyers. And then as you continue to travel south, there are new entrances into the new parking lot, 2 new lighted sport fields with restrooms, shade structures, landscape, the addition of lighted pickleball courts. We will also be installing a new splash pad. This will be our first free access splash pad in our community. And then, of course, all of the general infrastructure, as mentioned, it was a significant amount of earthwork and then pulling reclaimed water. We're going to be lighting the skate park with solar, so really being mindful about the sustainability of this project. If you'd like to go to the next slide, that is more detail about this skate park pump track. We worked with a specialty designer and the community with several community meetings to come up with this conceptual design. To the on the top of your screen is north, just to give you a perspective. Again, parking spaces. You can see where the small building there next to the parking lot is the restroom, and then a main entry concourse. To the south is the skate park, and so working with our skate community, we have a bowl and then also the rails. So there's a traditional bowl, and then there's the street style skating, and then there's a smooth transition to go into the pump track. And the pump track there's a variation, so it's not just a circle. Riders can choose a variety of different paths to come in and out of. And then, of course, we have trees, and as mentioned earlier, it'll be lighted, but using solar lighting. The next slide is a brief overview of the project. So the construction and amenities, just shy of 19 million, and then, of course, design, management, and owner contingency, about 2.5 for a total of $21,628,065 for the entire project. Our ask is for $1 million. The skate park space is a $2 million project, and so we are looking forward to a unanimous approval of our request. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you, Christy. Mr. Jankowski, has your director left anything off the table there with her descriptions?
Thank you, Vice Chair and Board. No, I believe she encapsulated everything very well. This is like she said, a new amenity for our community. The nearest skate park is over 8 miles away from our town limits, not even just this site necessarily. So it's not something that's easily accessible for our community. And in an attempt to try to use a pump track, we don't really have one anywhere within our community, so that's much farther away. But really trying to develop this site to have as many uses, be as versatile as possible, was our goal, and we feel like we're on the right track to accomplishing that. So yes, we very much appreciate all the time and look forward to your decision.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. Any questions or comments from the board?
One question, what's the population and composition of Oro Valley these days?
We are about 45,000. We completed a master plan that was presented in 2021, and at that time we had I want to say 48% of our population was over 55. So that balance is under 55. We do know that the pump track amenity itself is a very popular and desired amenity for that middle-aged adult, that 30 to 50 adult. We think is going to be our big user there in addition to our youth. This park is also surrounded by 3 very large HOAs that are family housing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Vice Chair, this is Dale. I wanted this to be pulled for the wonderful presentation that we just heard, just to remind the board members of something that Oro Valley has done that is such a challenge under the LWCF formula ranking. Mickey had mentioned that these communities have to match the funding with 50% of their own funding. And even though the $1 million price tag looks big, and it is big for all the reasons that we would think and that caught my attention, but the mere fact is they have to match that with another $1 million in order to accomplish the entire project. So from my personal view, I'd like to commend Oro Valley for working with Mickey and his staff. These are federal funds that the state agency is required as the pass-through to be able to do the granting. It's not easy, as Mickey well knows, to be able to work with these communities, particularly growing communities that have difficulty in being able to make up these matches. So from my humble view to the Oro Valley people, congratulations for making this thing happen, and we will be very anxious to be able to see the final product.
Well said. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And we would like to give our thanks to Mr. Chair as well. It's exciting, and then also a kudos to Mickey for all of the help and assistance he's provided us, from site visits to after-hours phone calls. We really appreciate his help and guidance in this process.
So you would be willing to fill out a performance evaluation on Mr. Rogers and his team?
Happy to help you with that, Chair.
Well, excellent. And we certainly hear that over and over again. So congratulations, team, on your support for this project. Any other conversation? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, Terry Palmberg, I move that the Arizona State Parks Board approve the 2023 Land and Conservation Fund application as follows: Oro Valley, Naranja Skate Park Pump Track Project in the amount of $1 million.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Member King,
I'll
second. All right, and with that, we'll do a roll call vote.
Dale Larson,
Aye.
John Sefton,
Aye.
Jeff Buchanan,
Aye.
Sarah King,
Aye.
Terry Palmberg.
Aye.
Mr. Vice Chair, the motion passed.
Very good. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Buchanan, can I just recognize Terry for her ability to make motions? She's doing awesome.
I second that recognition. Her reading skills are demonstrated today. So we're working well. Let's move on to item number 3. We have the presentation and discussion on Arizona State Parks and Trails fiscal year 2025 budget request. Kevin Brock, Assistant Director CFO, will give us an overview.
Thank you.
So yes, Kelly, if you'll flip over there. So last month we had an opportunity to walk you through highlights of the fiscal year 24 budget. And what we would like to do now is really give the board an opportunity to provide input and suggestions for our fiscal year 25. For those who have been through this cycle, they understand that we're always working a year in advance to pull things together the way that the state legislature works. So we put together a flow chart here so that you could have a visual of how that happens. We're really in the, we're in that May-June time period right there. And so what we start doing in the financial area is collecting data on actual expenditures from all of our park operations, capital projects, and we start in the May time period putting that together so that we can see, start using that for forecasting. In the green box, this is the point we're at right now where both internally in our own park staff as well as with the board, we'd like to have discussions about initiatives that we might include in requests to the governor's office for fiscal year 25. As we move forward into the July period, we'll kind of wrap up the analysis that we've done on any initiatives that are proposed. And in the month of August, we will present that to the governor's office through the OSPB. And at that point, they will receive that information, they'll review it and decide where it goes next. So we're really a suggestive input into that process. They're the next determinator of that. Kind of laid that out as well on the next chart here. We will start again with our own proposal to the governor's office. They become the filter. There will be rounds of back and forth of questions and answers from them. We have a chance to defend any proposals that we are making for initiatives that we are suggesting. They make that determination in the fall time as we get into October, November, December. After the Q&A, they will determine what gets put into the executive budget. That executive budget, of course, is then presented to the legislature somewhere in January as the session begins. We are really constrained by the amount, obviously, of funding that we have available. We have two primary sources for both our capital and our operating budgets. That's going to be the State Park Revenue Fund, that's what we refer to as SPRF. Those really are fees that are collected at the park from the operations. And then also SLIF. SLIF is our state lake improvement fund, and we are using that for administration of the parks as well. But those two funds really comprise the total resources that we have to draw on. Currently, we are absorbing 100% of everything that's appropriated from SPRF. SLIF is not appropriated, but we also have a cap on what we've agreed to spend out of SLIF, and we are spending 100% of that in our current operations. We also try to put aside a small reserve for any unanticipated, unforeseen events that do, in fact, pop up from the governor's office. We'll have requests for various actions, and so we'll try to set that aside out of those two funds. We are now, as you'll see on the next chart, we're going to walk you through what the current cash balances are of those two funds for both SPRF and SLIF. And the majority of them, 85% or so, are committed already to different programs, and we can talk to you about that for just a second. And the future of the SLIF fund, as you may be aware, is an ongoing discussion item with the legislators. They have ideas and thoughts about how those funds should be used, and that's something that has been continued. That discussion about the purpose and the administration of that fund is ongoing throughout the past couple of years and will be into the future. So this is our cash balance for those two funds. If you look at the top section there for the right, this is SPRF, our State Park Revenue Fund. Again, these are fees collected at the park for day use, camping, ramada rentals, whatever those fees may be. And you can see that we currently have $70 million in there. That $70 million includes almost $60 million for capital projects that have already been approved and that we're committed to. So for fiscal year 23, 24, and 25, I believe you had an overview of those projects last month in the board meeting. and that can be provided to you again if you would like. We also have in there prorated reserves for our current operating year, which wraps up at the end of June, and a couple other requests that we had from the governor's office. What's left after you set aside the committed funds out of that 70 million is just 7.4 million. So almost 85% of it is committed. We have a small piece of it that is not committed at this point. A similar story on the bottom, if you look at SLIF, the State Lake Improvement Fund, you will see that we have about 6.7 million out of 19 that are not committed. The commitments there are from prior year capital projects that are underway and have been approved, as well as grant funds. And the grant funds are in there not because they have in fact been awarded, but we're waiting for the reimbursement requests to come in from the entities that have received those grants. So that is about almost 2/3 of that fund is committed as well at this point, with the cash being the 6.7 million. Any questions about that right now, the cash balance, where we're at, and kind of how that process is looking?
So you're feeling comfortable with all of it?
We are comfortable with it. We have had larger cash balances in the past, but the legislative approval of that $62 million of capital projects are items that support the goals that we have in the mission. And so we are glad to have those projects out there designated and being underway.
Very good, thank you.
Kevin, with the project by project, obviously we're all facing the increased costs. Are you finding that your initial budgeting approach had enough in contingency to cover these increased costs? Or are we finding that projects are getting to the end and not having enough funding?
We could go into more detail if you'd like, Director Broscheid, but I think at this point we're just at the beginning of most of those projects. And there was anticipated inflation and escalation of cost included in those estimates. And so I don't know that we're down the road far enough yet to have any major concerns. We definitely have seen the cost escalation that we were thinking would be coming.
Yeah, and those are a little bit better to react to. You can trim projects, you can, eliminate some things, but when you see the 10% raise that went into effect this fiscal year, now that's hard costs. That's something you can't, or nor would you want to, unless you run into managing vacancies and using vacancies in those budgets. So it's kind of I think Kevin hinted at that, as those are hard base level increases in budget and expenditures you really can't do much about. But the other is the green here, and a lot of folks will think that's cash available on hand, it's surplus. Within there is allocated and some unallocated, and most of, like Kevin mentioned, is a lot of it is grant. So a lot of folks will see that and think, we've got $19 million available in SLIF as unobligated, unallocated funds, and that's not the case. Usually it's every dollar is, most all of the dollars there is available. So just wanted to make that clarification.
And those with power understand that.
We have to remind everybody every day.
Relabel that thing.
Yeah.
Did I have other comment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Jeff Buchanan with a comment.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I know how Kevin was asked the question and answered it, which I'm sure is 100% right, but I gotta be honest, I'm not comfortable with the lack of money we have to maintain the facilities that we have. I think we are, for whatever reason, regardless of source, most of this comes out of the SPRF rather than the SLIP fund, but I know we put the agenda item request for at some point in time in the future, doing a deep dive on what it's going to take to build and maintain and how we maintain the facilities we have. But many of our parks are in need of repair, and they're not adequately funded, and it gets compounded. I know Brittany's going to talk to us about a new park which sounds great. We get money for acquisition of the park, but not to build or maintain facilities that are gonna be needed to operate that park. And I think this is a problem that's actually getting worse. And I'll take my favorite example of San Rafael State Park. 2 years ago, we had allocated, I think, $6 million for repair facilities. And over time, that's been whittled down to 1.5 million starting in fiscal year 25, which is gonna only scratch the surface. And this is to keep the buildings from falling down, not building something new. So I think we got some real problems with this. I don't know that we really understand the depth of how far behind Bob probably does, but I, for one, as a board member, don't understand how far behind we are really across the board on maintenance. And I don't think we're adequately funded to have the facilities that we currently have. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox, but I think we gotta be really careful with how we answer this question.
And yes, you put a poignant point on that, so thank you, Member Buchanan.
Yes, thank you. I was really referring to the operations of the parks outside of the Capitol, and so point well taken. Thank you. In the next couple charts here, as we're considering budget initiatives looking for fiscal year 25, we are looking at both our strategic plan and the also the SCORP plan. I know that you've had some opportunity to become familiar with these. We sent out copies of them. This is the STRAP is a draft. It has not been approved by the governor's office yet at this point. And I know also that the SCORP plan is out there and still awaiting approval from National Park Service. But these are these are the pillars and objectives that we are trying to consider and support as we're allocating funds. We're looking at the parks, the partnerships, the people, the pocketbook on the STRAP, and then also the priorities that we have on the SCORP for conservation, sustainable outdoor recreation, our connectivity with the community, and also pathways to health and wellness. So those are out there for your look. At this point, I will tell you also that the staff has been working on budget initiatives that we've been doing evaluation and collecting information of. There's really 4 primary categories that we are looking at right now. One of them is both testing and implementing some features of the new reservation system that came online in July of last year. There were several different functionalities of that we put on hold until we obtained stability and we're in a place where we could open up new functionality. So we're looking at a couple of those functions that may be helpful for us in supporting our STRAP initiatives. Another one is just IT data system upgrades. That's another category that we're looking at. Optimization of park staff, how our overall staffing plan is working and whether it is sufficient, where we may need to shore that up. And then finally, modernization of some of our operational equipment in the park. Those are some general categories that the staff is looking at, has received some input on, and that we're currently evaluating. So at this point, we'd like to open it up to the board, and Director Broscheid will help guide a discussion to get input from you on what initiatives you would like to see included in the fiscal year 25 budget.
Excellent, thank you, Kevin. Director Broscheid,
Yeah.
you want to open and then lead conversation?
I can, and I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. You know, within the budget, you know, Kevin laid it out, there's always more priorities than there is available funds, and then trade-offs, you know, are made, you know, based on a whole bunch of things that are either in our control or not. The legislature certainly has their priorities, the governor's office has theirs, and then we try to weave between those and really, like Kevin said, defend sort of our requests. But at the same time, instead of, you know, taking that approach of, well, there's only so much money, there's also things that we can do to increase revenue, right? Increase revenue, decrease spending, or both. And we've seen a really big jump in visitation, which is also leads to revenue, increase in revenue and reservations. The others, with a lot of the concessions that are coming online now, we're getting less dependent on visitation. The concessions we're receiving percentages of the gross income, so that's also helping as well. And it's not necessarily leading to a huge commitment, a permanent commitment of staff. At the same time, we also have the ability to adjust fees. We may need to look at increasing fees, decreasing fees in certain areas, or at least we have a range the legislature gave us, is that we can look at those fees. So there's ways of us also looking at increasing revenues. We're constantly looking for ways of saving money, decreasing our costs. And but there's also those pressures out there that are not in our control. Salaries, benefits, across the board pay raises. We are managed with the Department of Administration on our fleet. And when we have to replace 40 to 50 some vehicles over a 2 to 3 year period, that gets very, very expensive. Especially now, if you can get them now. So, all of those things that I think as you guys, I think, have always brought the approach as the board is tackling those priorities that you have approved either in the strategic plan and or the SCORP. And we try to do the best that we can, but at the same time is being flexible and being reactive. You can always go into every legislative session with the best plan, and then next thing you know, there's things that will be thrust upon you, and then we have to be able to react. So I think there are alternative funding source discussions that have been going on for decades. We had meetings with some certain partners that are willing to dust that off again, and something is robust, is permanent, it's constitutionally protected, perhaps. Those things that maybe cities, towns, counties, we're all kind of in this crunch, as you well know, Chair. I mean, you deal with this every day. But there may be time to look at an additional revenue source outside of the general fund and outside of SPRF and potentially SLIP. So, I think for us and for you all, I'm really glad that we can have this time to sit and talk with you and hear what your thoughts are. But it's really priorities are great on paper, but until you put money, until you put resources behind it, it's just talk. And this is really what makes priorities come to life and helps us achieve that greater goal. So I hope that helps. I think Kevin laid out a lot. I don't think there's a whole lot to fight over here, but it's also not doom and gloom either. I think we've done a really good job within our agency of being as frugal and conservative as we can, but at the same time has taken advantage of opportunities. And through the presentations you guys have all gotten throughout the year from various programs, from the strat plan to the SCORP, that I think we are and will remain a leader in outdoor recreation in the state. And I think it's something to always keep our eye on. We'll always be reactive. We'll always make sure we have that flexibility as much as we can, that we can react and take advantage of opportunities, but also defend the home front when we need to. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Excellent. Well said, Bob. Thank you. And it doesn't take, you don't have to look too far back into history when there was a totally different discussion going on about how to operate or how to exist. And you guys have definitely taken strides as a team, as a state parks team in a whole new direction. So let's open that up for discussion. Members on the line, any questions, comments?
Yes, Vice Chair John Septon, this is Dale. Just to kind of follow up on what Board Member Buchanan was referencing, and of course he used the example of San Rafael, and that can be multiplied 10-fold, 20-fold, or more throughout the state. I think the challenge for us as a board, since we do not have any legal fiscal responsibility with respect to the budget itself, I fully understand, and Kevin made it well known that, and as well as Bob, that the budget is a priority of the governor and then approved by the legislature. But I think as a board, we do have the priority responsibility of telling the stories of San Rafael plus many, many more on what this maintenance backlog looks like in terms of dollars and cents. And if, for example, various legislators picked up on that storytelling marketing effort on our part to be able to try to at least whittle away at these issues before some safety relationship takes place or some tragedy where a park has to be either partially or fully closed down, all of those kinds of areas. Management through the staff has been exemplary. There's just no question about it. Bob, you and your staff and the that's out there is doing just phenomenal work. But I think as a board, as a volunteer board member, I need to do a better job in sharing this whole notion of what the maintenance backlog is in terms of, hundreds of millions of dollars, whatever it is, and specifically what parks like San Rafael, in the hope that somebody will pick up on that and that in any given budget proposal, once it gets down to the legislature, we will be able to see some progress. Using our partners that have been through the granting process with Nikki and Matt and the whole crew, for them to be able to go to bat for us as well to make these parks better. And then second is, and I'm glad that Kevin showed, and I think it was Sarah who sent out the strategic priority plan as well as the score. Those things just don't exist on paper. I mean, we need to make them come alive. And then we need to identify those priorities as best as we can, whether we have open discussion on our board agenda meetings, whatever it is, to make sure that they aren't just plans, that these things can be actionable items, that if we can't do it as a board, we will do our best to try to encourage our friends in the state legislative branch to be able to take the ball and run with it. So I agree with you, Vice Chairman Sefton, that we've done, the department has benefited significantly in the last few years from even the outcome of the recession, which really threw a curveball at everybody to try to make up. But I am very sympathetic to what Jeff is talking about, knowing that what exists at San Rafael exists so many other places. We need to be able to guide and advise and suggest those storylines, and hopefully they'll pick it up at the legislative branch.
Yeah.
Well said again,
Mr.
Dale.
Chair, can I make an additional comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I really like what Dale said, but I think before we launch, I am not sure that I understand what is appropriate, what's my left and right limit, both legally, as a member of the board. I know that we are not technically strict, and we can do things that the director can't, for example. But I'd like to know what we can do, and then if you have thoughts on what we should do, we're not lobbyists, obviously, but I have no problem going back to the Senate to make comments or writing articles or whatever. But I need to know what I don't understand what's appropriate and what's legal with respect to board behavior.
Thank you, Member Buchanan. I think there's probably a wide array of approaches to this depending upon your employment status. So that may be worth a conversation offline as far as advocacy or activism associated with our park system, and there's a way to approach that. Director Brochai?
Yeah, and Member Buchanan, when it comes to budget, at least on this topic, Kevin mentioned earlier on is once, the budget is a closely guarded secret when you're in the executive branch, and really it's their call. We like you're doing here is we provide recommendations and things, but when the budget is is during the development of the budget and when it is released, we march to that drumbeat that comes from the executive budget. So other than providing information, if clarification perhaps, like to a member of the legislature, the lobbying of the budget in this aspect really resides out of the executive branch. We end up taking I'm not gonna say a back seat, but we really let the governor's office of strategic planning and budget run the show. Just because there's so many agencies, 40 plus agencies that have combined budgets. Now the difference between that and what you're seeing on the Game and Fish Commission is the Game and Fish Commission is a separate entity. They have their own statutory authority for the budget, for their legislative actions, lobbying and all of that, that they really don't have to follow the executive's budget. It's included in the executive budget, but they can run their own show. State parks used to have that prior to the recession, or shortly thereafter that, that authority for you and me and my staff to operate like the Game and Fish Commission does, is gone. And that now has moved. And I think that's probably a really big difference, what you're probably seeing already. So really this is, once we compile and submit and negotiate, it goes dark. And then we see the budget come out sometime in January, and we're diving into there to see what's included and what isn't. So it's a big difference, and you're kind of seeing both sides of that being on both the board and the commission at this point.
Well, so I guess really what I would, again, given Dale's comments, what I'd like to know is how can we be helpful to this process and to just this one issue, if nothing else, but our maintenance backlog.
Yeah.
And would it be helpful for us to engage, even if it's individual senators or something, rather than, the legislature as a whole? Or, and I'm sensitive to what the process is and how it goes back and forth. I just want to make sure they understand the scope of the problem, and I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure your staff does a great job informing them. I'm not sure that all the people making the decisions understand this, because it's gone through 3 or 4 layers, and you're probably you're not allowed to engage individual senators. But if we are, then maybe we should take that on. That's really what I'm talking about.
No, you're absolutely right, Member Buchanan. We need your help. You can help, and we're going to be asking you for that help this summer. And one example is, instead of next year doing the legislative day, where maybe you get a hit or miss legislator or their staff, that we're going to do tours, and where we can have them at least for a day, where this is myself, deputy director, we've got assistant directors, board members, where we can really sit down and visit parks and see what we're talking to them about, and do this around the state and meet those members that are in those districts, chairs of budget committees, et cetera, that we do have to be able to be more effective at communicating that backlog and our needs. So I hope this will help us push in that direction. So we'll be definitely calling on you and the other board members to help us get this story across about the backlog and the personnel that we have and the needs and the issues that we're facing. It makes it a lot more real and touchable, so you can actually see San Rafael. I bet there's members in that district that have never been to the ranch, and I think it's a lot of effort, but it pays off when it comes to budgets and negotiations and things like that. So, but I'm sure there's more things we can do, and we love to hear what your ideas are. But that's at least one that we're going to implement.
Yeah, that's great. So, Member Buchanan, do you have access to a helicopter?
Yeah, he does. Several.
I used to be in Port
There's some favors you can
Member,
catch in.
Member Palmberg has a comment.
On that same thing, you got a goal to increase collaboration and community outreach and education. You have that written here. And I do believe that's important, and I think hand in hand with that, we as a board need to know what state parks have active partnerships with foundations or friends of groups. Those are the people that I believe, when we have something going on, they need to reach out to the legislators and say, come,
Yep.
please participate. We'll put you on the agenda. We'll make a space for you. That's who's going to help us versus the board member itself.
That's right.
So get a group, mister, down there at that ranch.
He's working on it. No, you're right. From all of the grants that you approve,
Yeah,
you know, we've all seen what happened to Heritage Fund and Land and Water Conservation Fund, State Lake Improvement Fund grants that, you know, having the grantee relationship is great, but that we also need the little extra help. We need those people to call on in those communities like Oro Valley. What a great park that is. And it would only happen because we have staff, great staff, grant staff that do LWCF or Heritage Fund, that we can start that conversation and they can go to bat first.
so do we educate our individual park leaders as to who
Mhm.
their representatives are
Mhm.
on
And
a
they-
regular basis?
And they actively meet. That was one of the things when I came in was the park managers need to be excellent at their job on the park, but they also need to have a roll off the park.
Uh-huh.
And Dan Roddy's a great example. He's a member of the Chamber of Commerce in Lake Havasu.
Havasu does a great job.
And they do a great, now if we can, you know,
Expand that concept.
exactly right.
You know, you hit in that thinking, as we go through this, you talk about the people and the relationships.
Yeah.
And that value, and I see as, you know, an important part of the strategy is the people side. And
Mhm.
I think as a state agency, as a state, I think as a lot of the municipalities, we're focusing on the pay challenges that have been a long time burden or a deficit to getting and attracting the right people. But do you want to talk briefly on some of your intentions as a department for developing the bench, developing the quality of life for the employees?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. The salaries, benefits for our employees, there's what we saw last year, there's two real ways to approach salaries and benefits from recruitment, retention. We can provide counter offers if they get job offers from the outside. So some of those things are really kind of one-off. Last year was the 10% across the board pay raise that was approved and signed by the governor, approved by the legislature, signed by the governor, goes into effect. It was great. It was well needed, but it's going to be only as good in the next year or so, and then it erodes, right? And so we're always in competition with cities, other state agencies, federal agencies, other states. We've got the succession plan as being part of the people strategy, that we need to start growing the next generation of leaders. And we're seeing across all state government, but we're keeping a very close eye on, for our agency, is who is the next park manager, who's the next assistant park manager. And I think we've done a really good job within the budget constraints. And Kevin gives me 2 thumbs up, I'm good to go. But we've dealt with class reviews. We've had several raises that have gone into effect. We've countered. We've brought in much more attractive salaries just to be able to compete. And that again, it eats at that bottom line. What we experimented with years ago and brought it to fruition was it's not just about salary, as people need to be able to see in our agency a path to something better, greater, much more challenging, and being able to develop a program that allows from an intern to a seasonal to a park ranger, all the way up to the director's chair. Do people see a path for promotion and a career? And what's happening is, within all the state government, is that people are bailing before they even hit 10 years. And so we've got 25, 30-year folks, and then we've got 5 to 6 year folks. And those folks are retiring, and we're seeing a major succession deficit. And so it's coupled with, okay, not only just do you see a path, but what do you have to do? We call it our career path. And we've done it for park rangers, we've done it for our financial, doing it for our human resources, our IT, all of those folks that can see that I just have to do this and I can promote increase in salary, increase in responsibilities, et cetera, without having to compete necessarily on the outside. And that career path is, I think, only one of a kind in the entire state of Arizona government right now. And we've got a really good draft that we've actually started implementing. We're going to be talking with the Department of Administration, the governor's offices. This is the way we want to go, but it needs to come with a price tag. If we're going to do this, we have to do it, right? And if I don't want to tell employees that you can follow a career path and then there's no financial reward or there's no investment in their leadership and development programs, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's a really big assurance for our employees that are coming in who have been here a while. Salary discrepancies are always an issue. It's whack-a-mole. It's when you have just costs. People who've been here a long time, we could hire somebody tomorrow who's making more money, and that's just the way it works. We can correct it. But I tell folks that our staff is our greatest resource. It's also our most expensive one, but it's a good investment for them to see in our agency. It's also a good investment for us that they can continue on. So personnel has really been close to my heart, is trying to level that field a little bit. We were at one point not even looked at. We were getting one applicant for a job and we had to take them. We were down in employees and we were down in recruitment. Now, we're an agency that folks we're actually seeing competitive environments for great folks. Some folks, most of them are retiring, et cetera. The other is our law enforcement side. We've got to shore up our law enforcement. Santa Cruz, you've heard Santa Cruz County says they will no longer respond to our parks, who we relied on. That's troublesome. We get some bad actors like at Patagonia and some of those others that Mark and his team and our law enforcement park rangers are looking at much more of a robust program. So it's seeing all those needs but trying to make those work. But a huge investment in staff and programs that we actually need is really at the top of the list.
Is the legislator responsible for that area, aware of the police's non-reaction mandate?
Yeah, and it's only going to get worse, I think. Even some of the bigger counties and cities, they're getting pulled in different directions. They have staffing.
Desperate. They're desperate too.
DPS is 300 some vacancies, City of Phoenix, so that we don't have parks here, but they're all getting pulled in different directions, and we're, typically at the end, it's mostly disorderly conduct, things like that. But still, the reason we exist and the reason I attend our parks is because they feel safe, because they see rangers, they see our staff out there, and that's a key credibility factor of why folks come to us versus some others. So those are some of the things that, as you can see in the strategic plan, it's a really big portion, and it's optimization of park staff is a very big topic.
I have another question.
Holmberg, yes.
Yeah.
Do we keep track of the hours that staff work versus what they're paid? Because our industry is known for having to be, being pulled at all times. I mean, I used to work 60 hours a week,
Yeah.
On a salary,
Yeah.
but they don't do that anymore.
Nope.
So are we tracking those kinds of hours that staff are putting in and advising anybody about that?
They're tracking what they're tracking. They are salary, we are salaried employees, but they are working, I'd say, more than that.
Absolutely, they are.
And they're doing it to make, because a lot of our staff, you can't work 24/7.
Right?
So they have days off, and if you're short-staffed,
You come in.
somebody has to cover. And so that's the optimization, and that's one of the things we continually look at, not just the new parks that are coming on, but what are our existing parks. And you remember, I think you were probably here, there was, after the recession, after the loss of fund sources, staff were cut. But the park's still there, the infrastructure is still there, you know, all of those things, and it's really been a stressful time for park employees, and Phoenix employees as well, that they're doing more than they've ever done and working harder and more responsibilities that they have to accomplish with less.
So if police departments can say we're not gonna provide service anymore, can we close a state park?
We could, it's up to you, but I probably wouldn't do it. But you hit on a key point though, and Kevin's talking about IT data systems upgrade. Are there ways that we can use technology to better replace or use less staff, contact stations, things like that could be utilized, but as you well know, those are huge investments up front. But as, and to Member Buchanan's point about infrastructure, are there ways our team is looking at right now, water conservation? Maybe we just don't provide that, or we provide it in a different way. Utilities have been constantly increasing. So do we repair what we have? Do we replace it? Or do we remove it and bring in something that's a little less personnel intensive? And we can use things like IT or other factors that can kind of take a place of that. Not being replaced by robots, but certainly allows our team now to go focus on other things within the park.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On the line, any further questions, comments, direction, input? Great conversation thus far, and I think, you know, we recognize our infrastructure and our people are probably the two priority pieces, and then awareness, right? Our partnership and bringing awareness to our community as well as an awareness to our legislature that these are the issues, and it seems like the kind of the same old story over and over again, but it's the fundamentals of what we do, always getting the word out about what we and how we change people's lives for the better, and the value of parks and recreation, and the profession that it is to make our community and our state even better.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of, I was thinking as you were talking about your career path, and what better department than to have a path would be Parks and Trails. So, you know, leading the state in something along this line, leading in that way, and recognizing as an industry, we have great partnership. Dale, as a staff member at ASU, constantly working on the next generation of employees and people that are interested. I find myself fortunate to be able to network with a number of young people that have an interest, but sometimes just sitting down and showing that these are the myriad of ways that you can be involved in a very moving and impactful industry through parks and recreation. So that's something that I think we all do as board members, and to be able to promote that. Any other further input, questions that we want to peel out of the strategic plan, the two-pager?
Director, Vice Chair, this is Sarah Weber. Just one comment, because we talked a lot about infrastructure. When we think about infrastructure, we also think about technology, and that's such a continues to be a growing part of our total infrastructure system, especially as we start thinking about broadband and all these different capabilities. You know, that's where our staff spend a lot of their time, is in our systems. So I just want to mention that, because as we're looking at our budget issues, we're looking at the technology side as well as our physical infrastructure. And, you know, it's those three parts: people, technology, capital, that all have to come together for us to be successful.
Yeah, very well said. And that too comes with a whole series of risks, and that is a nonstop approach that does need investment. If you get too far behind on that technology investment, you open your systems way too wide to vulnerability and financial implications.
Yeah.
On the line, any further comments?
I would, John, just one other kind of closing comment on my part. I also really appreciate this conversation and apologize for not being able to be there in person, but clearly this is the kind of conversation that we need to get deeper into, as far as whether it's a retreat or an open conversation with the board, where we can bring in these partners and collaborators of ours to further exemplify it. In my 4 years on the board, this is the first time here on June 15th that we are talking about next year's budget. And I commend Bob and Kevin and the staff for at least giving us the opportunity before the groundswell of budget planning takes place. So very, very much appreciative of that. If there's one priority that I can draw from in this conversation, and I think Board Member Buchanan started it off, we need to be able to really prioritize what we mean by safety. If this maintenance backlog is creating unsafe conditions, if our personnel shortages in any way are creating unsafe conditions, we need to promote that story similarly to what police departments and DPS and other law enforcement, public safety officials do, because that resonates with legislative people when they know that there's the potential of an unsafe relationship, whether that's environmental, whether that's social, community impact, whatsoever. So under the guise of safety, maybe that's one way that we can help guide this budget discussion. And then the last three items, real quickly. When the SCORP plan gets approved by the National Park Service, we really need to do a lot of promotion on what that means. SCORP, the acronym, means very little to 99% of the people living in Arizona. We understand what it means, but we have to really bring that plan alive. Second, Bob is, I think you're either chair or co-chair of this committee that's been put together to look at the off-road vehicle crisis situation, correct?
Not the chair, but a member. Don't scare me like that.
Well, maybe you should be chair. Anyway, I think that committee could be an opportunity for this conversation, not just from a state park, but also from state land, from game and fish, from forestry, on, to help, again, create this dialogue of the unsafe conditions that are being created by OHV, and that could possibly get into a budget. And then finally, we are going to, as Kelly is trying to do, take us on the road. So if Havasu is our next stop, we need to really make sure that we give a big impact to those partners in Havasu that can come to that meeting so that they can hear this message and take it to their elected officials and the state legislators. So thank you very much, Bob and Kevin, for making this happen, Sarah, all of you. But I think this is an opportunity that we've not experienced before.
Good.
Excellent, Dale. Thank you for that. And Bob?
Just to help wrap it up, it sounds like we're heading there. Just so right now, with the input we got from you, this is like another filter or lens. We're pulling ideas, needs, wants from the field as well, from all of our staff. Having this new lens will help us refine any budget requests. And then what we'll probably do is should be receiving some kind of guidance from OSPB on what the governor's priorities are, what agencies should focus on, not focus on. And I think this administration is going to be different. I think she's got real aggressive priorities. So I think they'll be really wide open and then they'll winnow down. And just to give you a comparison, we've been told don't submit anything, anything new, anything above what you did last year. To I think now in Governor Hobbs' administration is ask for a lot. Let's see what we can do, especially when it comes to parks and outdoor recreation. So as we get that guidance, we can also keep you guys informed as best as we can of what this budget is looked like, and then of course we'll present to you guys of what it is when it comes out of the executive branch. Like I said, we go dark, radio silent, right, when it's submitted, just because it isn't leaked. And legislators love to pressure us on what we've submitted, and for good or bad, and we have to say sorry. But maybe there's a chance, an opportunity for us to share with you some of the inside baseball that's going on, just to keep you all in the loop of how this is going, and then we'll start this again next year. But in the meantime, I think we got to get a retreat down, and maybe we can have a better, longer discussion about this and more in depth. So thank you guys for your time and your input. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you. Item 3 is not an action item, so great conversation. Thank you. We'll move on to item E, future agenda items.
I think we got them.
We got a few.
Right. The operations and maintenance backlog discussion.
For those on the line, do we have any future specific beyond the thinking about our infrastructure, thinking about our strategic plan, our funding sources? Very good. On to item F, Executive Director's report on current events. Bob?
Mr. Chair, I'll keep it pretty short because it feels like it's only been a few weeks since our last board meeting, but I got to attend, I drew the short straw and got to attend the Joint Committee on Capital Review. This is the entity in the legislature that allows us to expend money on capital projects. So without their approval, we can't do anything. Well, this one was Tom Kometz and Mark Weiss and his team submitted all the capital update, which was on the consent, which passed. And then the other item was for me to have to answer a whole bunch of questions about Del Rio Ranch and that legislation, headwaters of the Verde bill that passed. They had a whole lot of questions about the process. Well, they tabled that item. We never got a chance to talk, and I was all ready. But I got out of it. I suspect we're going to be having some more discussions with them, as well as bringing this to the board. It's probably a good chance. We're going to meet with the Trust for Public Land on Tuesday up on the property, but we'll come back and fill you in on what's going on with that whole project. But essentially, it's the new state park in Arizona. In Chino Valley. Yeah, that's right.
Is the legislator rep gonna be there?
Nope. No. And then, so while I got the short straw, Sarah and Mark got the big straw, and they got to have fun with, I don't like to say he's our new policy advisor, but he's newly designated to step in. His name is Will Green. He's going to be our policy advisor when it comes to parks, outdoor recreation, and the natural environment. So he has other agencies. And then our other one, which we were introduced, was Ian O'Grady. He's really going to now focus on state historic preservation, cultural resources side. So we have kind of two policy advisors, but they took him up on the Verde River, took him in a kayak, and got to talk to him a lot about our agency and more in depth, and also the Rockin' River, and talk about that, which is slated to open to the public this fall. So So other than that, it's been watching the legislation go through. Brittany's on well-needed, well-deserved annual leave. And she got out of town just in time. But we're continuing to track the legislation that's going on, some that is working its way through and some that has been approved. And I'm sure we'll wrap that up. Hopefully there'll be sine die here pretty soon. It doesn't look like anytime soon, but they're still chugging along, and Parks is still included in a lot of things. So we'll keep you updated on that.
At least AOR and Parks boards were re-upped.
Yeah. Yes. For 8 more years,
8
so we
more
don't have to
years.
worry about it for a long time.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Item G, current events from the board members. Anything current event-ish?
Terry Palmer, just a reminder, it's the 10th anniversary of the loss of the firefighters, so there's events in Yarnell and Prescott, and if anyone wants to come to Yarnell, just let me know. I can overnight you or put you up in a
You're-
cool space until
you're a
the
great
event.
host.
It's hot up
She's a
there.
great host.
So,
Good, thank you. Anyone online? All right.
Just regarding the same event, so Bob, could you or one of the members of your staff call me at some point in time about the 30th?
You bet.
And whether or not I'm still gonna be going with you and all that stuff.
You bet. We actually have the split staff, remember Buchanan? The governor, the land commissioner, myself, we'll be following the governor to Prescott. Prescott is having a big memorial ceremony, but it's at the same time as Yarnell. Actually, the exact same time, like 3 in the afternoon, 3 to 5 or 3 to 6. So we're gonna split groups. I'll be in Prescott, but I'll have staff in Yarnell.
he's gonna go to Prescott, I think.
You're gonna go to Prescott? Okay, I can call you and we can coordinate on that.
Okay, sounds good, thanks.
Very good. Item H is call to the public. Do we have any members of the public? Going once. All right, and then we have our future meeting dates, item I. I think we do have everything listed as here at the central office that we are attempting to plan for August.
Make have a suit.
Oh,
Cool.
Cool.
Cool, not cool.
Shorts is required.
Right.
It'll be inside.
Excellent. And
Sure.
with that, I will call this meeting to adjournment,
Thank you. Good job.
11:33.